afternoon, guys. I'm Sean. Welcome to Rambles with my camera. Yeah, today's ramble, I'm taking you up to Dublin. Dublin's first city where the girls are so pretty. And first set my eyes on sweet Molly Malone, as the song goes. So, right, we're in Dublin. And what I'm going to do, guys, I'm going to shoot 36 exposures. I'm shooting a Nikon D3300. Now watch this traffic here. I got to cross here. Oh. Right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to just shoot 36 exposures, and I've got the digital camera, but rather than just shooting maybe, 100 or 150 photographs, I'm going to be shooting 36, and that's it. And I'm going to let you see the 36 exposures. You have to trust me in this one. I like to think I'm a trustworthy person, so 36 exposures, warts and all, and let's get taking some photographs. So guys, this photograph here, this is the first frame that I took on this 36 exposure challenge. This girl here, she was slightly down the street from me, probably about 8 foot away from me, and I could see that she had her cash card in her mouth, and she must have been obviously purchasing something. So she walked slightly past me. So of course I turned around. I had the camera already set up because I'm constantly taking light readings as I'm walking, so I just raised the camera up and took the photograph, and I just obviously thanked her and walked on. She's probably in shock, thinking I was probably going to steal her account details. Now this photograph here was slightly just across. You can see the bikes in the background there. That's where I took that photograph of the girl with the card in her mouth. I crossed the street and I seen this the model photograph here, and it's a lovely photograph. Lovely looking girl carrying a bag, and I just turned around and this lady was walking towards me. So it was literally a split second that I raised the camera up, and of course lost the feet there. So it's a failed photograph. I still think it could possibly have worked a wee bit there, because obviously you've got the contrast there between the young and old, and both of them carrying the bags and things like that. And I tweaked it in black and white there to see, but because her feet's cut off, it's a fail in that one. Now this man here, he was walking down the street in front of me. I was crossing, not in front of me, he was in actually opposite side of the street walking towards my direction. So I crossed over the street towards him, and he had a character looking face type thing, but he was walking quite fast, and basically I never got a full on shot. So I just turned the camera around, waited, and I took the photograph. There was a van coming down the middle of the street there, so it was a grab shot once again. And the lighting and all was dead on. I think the speed captured it, but the photograph was a fail as such. It didn't, it's not what I wanted. This character here, when I initially saw him, I thought it was Ronan Keating out of Boys Own, sitting there having a cup of tea. Being in Dublin, you might see Ronan Keating, that's where he's from. Or it might have even been Ben Brown, a bit of a mixture between both of them. And when I was about to take his photograph, he wasn't looking at me, he was actually looking at obviously his phone, but the way he was sitting with his chin was resting perfectly on his fist. It was almost like that statue, the thinker. But he glanced around as I was taking a photograph, that was it. So I just nodded at him, said thanks Ronan, and I walked on up the street. Met these three ladies. They were just sitting having a smoke break outside the place where they work. I initially was going to take a grab shot without their consent, but clearly it was a near Temple Bar. A quiet enough street, so obviously they looked up. I said, ladies, can I take your photograph? Not at all, you're not going to take my photograph. I said, why not? I said, look, I'm a street photographer, just want to take a photograph. And they laughed and they said, okay. And that's it. That's took a one frame on that and done it in black and white. I will drop some prints into, next time I'm up in Dublin, I'll drop them in some prints. I know where they work. But it's just nice, interacting with people, and you can see they're happy, and it's a lot of people don't really interact as they're out and about in the street, but I think we're missing opportunities here. Each to their own, but if you don't want to interact, that's fine. But I love meeting people, and I was glad that the three ladies let me take a photograph there. Met these two ladies outside like a garden centre, Pars Court Centre, I think it was called, in Dublin. And I just thought the shades looked really cool, and you'll see some of the other photographs coming up. Shades plays a bigger part in that day, but I just thought both of them looked fantastic. Nice style about them. I love the shades, and unintentionally, of course, you've got the reflection of myself in them. I took that one, and I also took that one there. Obviously the lady on the left, we were talking and joking as we're taking the photographs, but I do think the first photograph worked better, and obviously I've given them the details to contact, and I'll send them some images over. Now this lady here, obviously speaks for herself. She's having one of them cigarette things, e-cigarettes, whatever you call them. I just think they're unusual, because I don't know my views on them. I think is anything better than smoking and things like that. They're still taking nicotine in, and it's their way of getting off them. But I think it's almost like they're playing a tin whistle. And if you look at the sign above it, the signage, it was actually said newsagent going across it. And the cropping off it was like agent or gent. And I just think the way she's nicely dressed or added to it. But once again, it's not a great photograph as such, just more probably in about 30 or 40 years time we'll be able to look back at it and say, look, I can't believe people were putting them in their mouths and smoking it. But really, photograph wise, it's non-runner, no good. This one here is in Temple Bar. Now I walked down past this guy. He was dressed as a Viking, and he was, you know, obviously the sign says for self. He was directing people till a fast food joint in Temple Bar, and I heard him calling, and I looked around, and this young lad here, he was probably about 15 foot on up the street, and the man was pointing on the ground, and he said, look, you've dropped your money, and there's a load of notes, like you're probably talking about 50, 60, 70 euros, $70 laying on the ground. And that was, I had the camera set up because, as I said earlier, I constantly check the lighting as I'm walking. I always shoot in manual and shooting in raw, so I had the lighting already set, and was just quickly turned around and took that grab shot of him exchanging and giving him the money back. So fair play on that man, let me tell you. But that's just more feel-good photograph. This one here, also in Temple Bar, just slightly down the street from where the Viking guy was. And, you know, the guys clocked me, obviously, taking the photograph because I say I'm crouching down onto it. But he was engrossed in his meal, and his wee dog was engrossed in looking for the crumbs coming down when I nicely put the camera to my eye. But as I was looking through the viewfinder, the guy clearly saw me. I fired off the shot and I approached him and I said, look, I'm taking a photograph today. And he was okay, he just sort of nodded. The dog crossed around, I crossed around as well, and I took that second photograph. So the first one wasn't staged, second one, technically not staged, he knew it was there, the second one. But that's another shot there. This one here, now I seen this as I was walking through one of the side streets in Dublin, and I thought it was class because obviously some workman has put concrete down on the footpath, and I'm just trying to visualise a person who walked over the top of it, in both directions. I'm sure they had a hard time getting the cement off their feet, or maybe they're buried underneath it, I don't know. But there was nobody in the street walking past. I tried to take a shot, compose a shot without anybody in it, and just wasn't working. It was lacking, probably the angle of it. But there was a guy having a smoke. The next door down from where this was, he was having a smoke break, and I called him over and I said, look, you wouldn't mind walking past this section here? And I got him to walk past, and I think it works. I think it just adds to it. But it's a staged photograph. In other words, I got the guy to walk past, but I think it makes a photograph. Slightly down that street, rubbish bin waiting to be collected, obviously, and just it's a mess really, but the shoes and all on top of it. But I just think there's something artistic about it, the way there's all that, the colours and the different bits and bobs sitting into it, cigarette butts inside the cups, but the trainers on top was possibly just what drew my attention first and foremost. And I don't think if the Coke can and the trainers were sitting on top would I have took it. I don't think so, but I just think it's quite artistic the way it's sitting. So that's that one. Now this photograph here was taken in O'Connell Street in Dublin, just below. There's a big spar thing there in O'Connell Street. Looks like a big needle in the middle of O'Connell Street. And I seen these girls sitting talking, and the girl in the middle, she was fixing, just started raining a bit, and she was fixing her scarf over her head, and I just liked the way it looked. I think it was lovely looking, but I say, but just like that, and I wanted to get really close in it. I had the 35mm lens on, and it would have been nice to get really in close, so I took that one shot. She of course seen me, her other friends then looked, and I just pointed to the camera and gave her like a thumbs up, is it okay to take another photograph? And she sort of smiled, and I took this photograph. And I just think it's a lovely, lovely photograph, and I think it's a natural. And even her friend to the left, just smiling and laughing. But it's although she knows it was taking the photograph, so it's not staged as such, and certainly not candid. But I think it works, and that's what I liked about it. I gave them my contact details, and I told them I've got a YouTube channel. One of the girls asked me what I'm going to do with photographs. I told them I'm going to be on YouTube, on Facebook, and I give them contact details. So I'll send them over prints if they contact. I hope they do, because I think it's a lovely photograph. Now this one here, obviously I took this, speaks for itself. It was on one of the side streets in Dublin, and that was sitting exactly the way it's sitting. And I just thought it was, I think it's class, because you say, what happened? Did somebody take the whole bike and leave the handlebars? Like, you know what I mean? It looks as if the handlebars have been snapped off, or what? But it's just like a piece of art there in itself. I chose to print it, edit in black and white, and I think it works better because you've got the different contrasts there. This was in a charity shop, an Oxfam bookshop in Dublin. And this girl here was the opposite side. She was going through the CDs, and obviously when I glanced over, I seen the shades. Remember I was telling you about this thing about the shades? Now she's got shades in the top of her head. I just think it's more fun photograph than it is anything else. And this guy's a road sweeper. He's walking down the street, and I seen him in the distance, and funny enough, he just reminded me of a duck, and it's more than the mast type thing. So I fired off a photograph, and you know, it's a basic photograph, nothing special about it. Not that the person is not special, but it's, in the bigger picture of things, it's you know, it's a bland photograph. But to me, it was, I'd rather be taking the photographs than not taking the photographs. In other words, the old saying is, you know, it's better looking at it than looking for it. I would have kicked myself if I hadn't have took the photograph and said, I wish I had took that. Now this guy here was walking up. I thought that he a real character. Like, he was walking up, and I could see the shades again. I must be getting a fetish here about shades. And I just turned around and said, man, listen, can I take your photograph there? And he was up for it, not a problem. And then as I was, you know, focusing and getting the lighting setting, of course he pulled this face. It's his call, like, but it adds to it, and he looks a real character. So he'd be a good person to know and have a friend on it, because he was up for getting his photograph taken, but more importantly, he pulled that face, so that will reflect his character. This lady here, was walking past her, and she was on the phone, so I couldn't get seeing her face as such. Her head was tilted down. But the first thing I was drawn to was the wee necklace that she had on, and I could see that shining and the black of the scarf. And I just walked past you. You'll see the electricity box, the grey box, in the background. I got down to about there, and something in my mind said, go back and take that photograph. So I walked back up a street. I walked past her. She was still on the phone. I went probably about 10 foot past, and I turned around again. I walked slightly down towards her. I had the lighting all set, raised the camera to my eye, and as I did, she glanced up, and I had fired off the frame. And instantly the camera set, I have the camera set one frame at a time, and I must have hit it twice consecutively, and it fired off the second one literally a moment later. I didn't fire off the third one, but if I had have, I would have captured her smiling. She was happy enough. I just said thank you, and I walked on. But I think it's a lovely photograph in itself. It's a natural photograph, natural, beautiful looking wee girl. But I was drawn to that necklace, and I think it all works now. See, I think that's the thing about photography, and especially if you're drawn just to take a photograph on one particular thing, take it. Don't be looking too much. Oh, what's it going to say? Something that says you to take a photograph, and you take a photograph, and you know, it may work, it may not work. But as a result of seeing her necklace, now I'm looking at the photograph, the still of her, and you can see her earrings. Do you know what I mean? You can see the makeup, you can see her style, and it's captured on more in that fleeting second that I had seen her wee necklace walking past. And I'm just glad I took that one. This one here didn't work. There was intention. I thought it would have worked, but then again, it was the painting there, or the artwork. It had something written on the top right hand corner, which is out of frame. I can't remember what it was, but it was just, I couldn't have painted it. So whenever I seen this girl just walking past, I tried to get the shot. Once again, 50 mil. I keep calling it 50 mil because it's a 35 mil, but it's shooting as a 50 mil. And I think that's where I genuinely want to keep calling it as a 50 mil, because really, in the way I shoot photography, that's what I'd normally have shot it at. That's like a 50mm lens in a full frame. But in the crop sensor, the 35mm 1.8 is really about a 52, excuse me, 52 mil. and it never worked. Not only did I lose out where it had wrote on the top right hand corner of the caption, if you look at the depth of field as well, it's not working. Both the girl and the woman in the background. The woman in the background with her arms folded, she was standing there for about 3 minutes, because I was standing maybe 5 minutes maybe. She was standing there as long as I was standing there. I was waiting on somebody to come past to try to get it. So I started walking up and down. It's like a mall. And I think she might have thought I was going to steal something, to tell you the truth. It was loitering around, or some sort of pervert hanging about with a camera. So she's there as well. So I took that one frame, and rather than me hanging and shooting it, I looked at the back of the LCD, and I knew I missed it then. And I said to myself, well, I hang on to it? And I said, no, I walked on. So that's a failed photograph there. Now, I thought this here was quite cute. This is one of the streets in Dublin. I don't know why I keep saying Dublin. All these photographs are taken in Dublin on the same day. And it's just like the umbrellas there, the colours, and it's a great idea. And they've all got wee lights. Obviously, it'll look fantastic at night time, but they've got all wee lights attached to them. So it took that. Once again, 35mm lens. Does it work? No, it just shows you what it really is. But in the bigger picture of things, it's not a good photograph as such. It could have been better. Now, what I did do was this photograph here and the following photograph. This was a reflection of a transit van, or a white van. And I like the way it looked, coming up, because I say it gives a different perspective. You can see the buildings and things like that, but you can also see the drips onto the windows. And this second photograph's the exact same angle. So it's just when you're out there and you're taking photographs, if something doesn't work one way, try to do something else the other. So there's 2 frames set off. This girl here on the bicycle, I'd seen her, she was taking photographs of the things, and I think it adds to it, especially with her helmet. So I took this one photograph here, and I went down behind her, and she was taking a photograph, and I raised the camera to my eye, and she looked around, she got startled a bit, and I just said, no, photographer, I said, could you do it again? And I got her to put, so this photograph here is actually a posed photograph, although I'm replicating what I saw whenever I crouched down behind her. But I think I scared the girl. You have to watch as well, do you know what I mean? I'm a fella, and if you get like a 48-year-old man creeping up behind some girl with a camera, it could create you in a lot of hassle. So basically, I had to diffuse the situation. I just turned around and said, no, I'm a photographer. Get her to take that photograph again, and I got her to hold up the camera. One regret that I didn't actually get her details, so I could have sent her, because obviously she might have been putting that on till Instagram or one of her social media platforms. It's always good to have. But I think that works, by the way. Once again, this lady was walking towards me. She had a character face. I love people, you see. I love characters. It doesn't matter whether female or female, young or old. If there's something about them photogenic, I would like to take it. And this lady was coming up towards me. I raised the camera to my eye, ready to get her full on. But a person sort of walked in front of her, so she had a step to the side as she's still coming on. And I got that one shot as she came directly alongside me. Does it work? Well, it is what it is. It's a photograph of a thing, but bigger picture things, no, it's not. This lady here, florist, was coming up I seen her in the distance, and I just, I got myself, had the lighting all checked, waited she came up towards me, fired off that frame. If I had fired the second frame off, because she'd glanced and seen me, obviously she's so close to me, she'd give me a lovely smile, and that would have been the shot. I think the second frame would have been the shot, although that's candid. She's not looking. I still think that the smiley, happy, the girl carrying the flowers, she had a lovely, lovely smile, so I think it would have worked better. But look, it is what it is. I shoot one frame at a time, and I say I was under the 36. I actually miscalculated, as I mentioned earlier, about how many frames I had left. So now this here man, obviously it speaks for itself. It's he's just standing up. It shows us to do this here in black and white. It's a whiskey museum, I think it was, in Dublin, and the old boy was just standing up, and it's just like the style. He was just coming out of the darkness, took a photograph. Once again, all shot in RAW, and I think that's the biggest benefit about shooting on RAW, that it's so forgiving whenever you're shooting in different conditions, because it's going to retain so much more detail than it would in a JPEG compressed format. So I'm really now until big time into shooting completely RAW and everything. Not even standard snapshots you were going to take on, change over to JPEG. I just find it so much easier. Plus I'm learning so much more with Lightroom when it comes to editing and things like that. But basically that's that one. Okay for shot. Just wish I had knew who the old boy was. There's one here. I met up with Lynn, as Lynn's my partner, and that's not Lynn, by the way, in the photograph. If you look down the bottom right hand part of the frame there, that's Lynn's arm. We're in having a cup of coffee in Starbucks cafe. This girl's sitting just in the corner there, and I just thought she looked class, just so relaxed. But it just epitomised. Like, I remember ripped jeans in the 80s, so I see they're getting a resurgence now. But I just think it's so class that, you know, she's just chilling out on her own, cup of coffee, something to eat, and she's using probably free Wi-Fi, and it's just class. If I had have moved slightly to my left, and I did try it, by the way, and I'll tell you about it in a second, but if I had to move slightly to the left, she had lovely red lipstick on, and I think all of it would have really worked. But you can see yourself, being indoors, I'm a bit intimidated because, one, I'm not allowed to take photographs in shops and premises like that, because you're no longer in a public place, you're in a private space, and you're invading somebody's private. Like, that girl, genuinely there, is actually coming in to relax. Out in the public, she's walking about, so technically it's okay to do that. But when it comes to this here, that she's relaxed and she's just sitting chilling out, if you look at the angle of the camera, the wall in the background, I could have straightened it up. I could have thing. Now what I did do was, and Lynn's hand went over to get a cup of coffee, which is at the bottom right hand corner. But it's sort of an okay photograph. It would have been better. It could have been a lot better, in fact. And as if what I did do then at that stage, because I knew I missed this shot, I moved to the chair and the table. So I was directly face on. I could see the lipstick. I could see her the exact same pose, and I was going to have enough space on both sides of her. And of course, she glanced up, and so I didn't follow through on it. Now, whilst I was in there having a cuppa, I seen this couple passing from outside through the window, and I could just see the umbrella. I went out, and they were just at the set of traffic lights outside Starbucks. And so, of course, I had the 35mm lens on. I stepped back. It was a narrow footpath, so I went back as far as I could. People were passing in front of me. Composed the image, and I took the photograph. And I think it works. I looked at it in black and white, but the colour seems to be better. It could have been slightly better if I had a wider lens. I would have got the whole body in there, and you're more composed, but it was just so tight. 35mm. And I'm going to do an up and coming video soon about that, about the restrictions of having a lens that's not wide enough. Walking through the town to see these two ladies come behind. It's good always to keep looking behind. Look, in the bigger picture of things, what's this photograph in the bigger picture? Two people walking down the street. So technically it's not a good photograph in the context. It's a fun, probably them girls would get more out of it than you, the viewer, would. But where I see it is I'm capturing a style. I'm capturing, what it's like at this day in 2016. These are what people are wearing. If you looked at photographs from the 1970s, you would have actually seen them dressed with big flurry trousers. If you looked at the 1960s, and you'd had it. If you looked in any year, the 1920s and 1930s, the clothes, and the Victorian era, whenever you check, you'd see it. So I'm also taking photographs, not for here, and I've always said it, I capture the present so those in the future can look back at the past. And basically that's what I'm doing there. So in the bigger picture of things, it's only really just to have documented, and there's just two friends out for a walk. It could be relatives or anything. Now I met this character here. He was walking up through near Temple Bar, and I just liked his look. I just like his style, and I liked his energy. So I actually stopped him and I said, "Do you mind if I take a photograph?" And he said, "Right." I said, "Yeah, I might take a photograph of you. Not a problem." So I took that photograph. And I stepped back, once again still shooting a 35mm, stepped back, and although the feet's cut out, I think that's the angle they actually wanted to get it, because more concentrating. He had a pair of walking boots on anyway, but I wanted, because of the lens, I wanted to make sure that I was going to get enough detail of him as a man as well, so I liked that one. Now, I shot that in colour, obviously, all of them shot in colour, and then I put it in black and white, but I think both could work, black and white or colour. I think when you're talking about an old gent or an old woman, I think black and white does add a bit of time, tell it a bit of thing, but so that's in both. I then went in for another shot. This I'm up very close to him, or with the thing. I love that 35mm 1.8 lens, that Nikon lens, and it's just the quality of it. I think it's wonderful, and I got a nice shot of him there. Once again in black and white. I'll let you decide which one, colour or black and white, which one you prefer. I like both of them, I have to say. I think a black and white adds a bit of character, but I do like the warmth of the colour on this one, especially with his beard and things like that. Now this photograph here is a young couple. I seen them as I was walking through Temple Bar, and I seen a young girl, And I just turned around and said, "Love the piercings." And I actually walked over and I said, "Excuse me, can I take a portrait off you?" And she sort of laughed. And she looked, and I said, she didn't really, I don't think she really wanted to get a photograph taken at that stage. And I just turned around and said, "Look, it'd be great, I'm walking about, I'm taking street photographs, bloody blah, bloody blah." And I looked around at the young lad and I says, "You two a couple?" And he said, "Yeah." And I said, "Look, we've got a photograph of 2 years together." I said, "Both of you look class." And they're a lovely looking couple. They really suit each other there. You can actually see that in the photographs. But seeing the guy with Badass Cafe and the guy with, you know, holding on with the phone and the muscles and the things like that, I think it looks a really hip photograph of the two guys, and it all just really works well. But that's that photograph. Okay, that's the face of the honest man. That's a Viking guy who picked up the money. And I tell you what, I'm so glad to met him anyway, so I took his photograph, and it's just it's wonderful seeing people doing the right thing. This photograph here was taken across a street from where I was. The gentleman was standing at it, at the, you know, the shop front or the bar, and the lady was taking his photograph, and she crossed the road and stood beside him. And I just thought the cowboy hats, or the hats, especially with the guy with the hat in the Guinness photograph there, worked. And I just took a photograph, and there's it there in black and white, and I think the black and white works better, and that's a good thing I believe about the digital. At a flick of a switch and a few tweaks, you can turn something from colour into black and white. But I think both photographs could work. Now this photograph here, this is actually the last of the photographs. And it's, as I say, I've went over, I think it was 42, off the top of my head, I think it was 42 photographs, maybe more, that I'd taken. What's that photograph telling you about the situation? What story is it creating in your mind? This is in a coffee bar, I'm shooting through glass. And what's this photograph saying? You can see that the girl there with her hands over her face, and she's got one cup of coffee, the other girl has no cup of coffee. And, you know, I'm not trying to put stories in your head, but, you know, to me, when I seen that photograph, it's saying, like, you know, she's been given bad news, or what has she been told? Has her friend on the left of the frame walked in and told her bad news, or what? You know, so when you're looking at that photograph, I don't know what it's saying, tell you. But I'll tell you what the story is behind it. Both of them were sitting laughing and joking in the coffee shop as I was walking past. And it's just a lovely scene. And I raised the camera to my eye, and instantly the girl who has her hands over her face seen me, and she said something to her friend. And she's thrown her hands up to cover herself from not getting a photograph. The other girl has put her hand aside and turned herself around not to get a photograph. So I fired off one frame. But to me, that photograph in itself has actually made the photograph. Now, I wouldn't try to imply to anybody that it's been bad news, but it works. And I think it worked better than probably the photograph I had originally seen. But in reality, the fact of the matter is they seen me about to take a photograph and they shielded themselves. But I think it's actually created a separate story in it. So you go, guys. Listen, thanks very much for watching. I'm sorry if it was a long video, but I hope you found it enjoyable. And say some food for thought there. Guys, listen, if you haven't already done so, please do subscribe. You can check me out on Twitter and on Facebook, and also my website, rambleswithmycamera.com, and also take a race over and check out my Flickr page. I'm new to Flickr, so give us a shout, and certainly let me know if you've got a platform there that I can go and see your photographs in the comments below. Guys, send you love from Ireland, and thanks very much for watching.